Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm OB Aidan.
I'm Gaynor.
And today we have top 10 states with the lowest IQ.
Oh, there's going to be some people here at the...
You don't want it to be your state, do you?
Going to be offended, but...
Should we try and offend people and have a guess what number one's going to be? I've got a state in mind.
Originally, before I went there, I would have said Alabama.
Really?
Yeah, but when I went, I actually really enjoyed it. So...
I'm going to say Florida.
Florida?
Yeah. I just see like loads of news articles about like Florida man and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems right for me. Should we find out though?
Yeah.
Let's go. 10 states with the lowest IQ.
Today we're looking at the states with the lowest average IQ. If you have a low IQ and don't know what IQ is, I will tell you. Most people are aware of the term IQ and know it as a reference to a person's intelligence, but the term and the associated measurements are more than just numbers. What does an IQ test measure? How does the IQ test accurately capture the measurement of intelligence? I'm gonna tell you. The first thing you have to do is take a mental age test. This test determines what age you and your brain are working at. Then you got some calculating to do. To calculate a person's IQ, you take the person's mental age and divide it by their chronological age. Next, divide that number by 100, and you have the person's IQ. In full disclosure, I didn't know how they calculated that and come up with the number until I started researching this video. So that's what we're doing today. We're looking at the states with the lowest IQ. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, South Carolina. South Carolina is one of the many states that has never been really known for its brain power. They do have some incredible universities. They just have a lot of backwood areas that have a lot of people that do a lot of stupid stuff. Case in point, a man in South Carolina was driving down the road and saw his neighbor had a Joe Biden sign out right in the middle of the lawn. He couldn't take it. He had been doing a little drinking after work and decided to drive onto the neighbor's lawn and destroy the offending sign with the front bumper of his truck. As you can imagine, the neighbor who owned the sign and the lawn was pissed. He bought a new sign and planted it right where the other one was. 2 nights later, that sign was run over. This went on for 3 weeks. Every night, every other night, every third night, his sign would be run over. So the man decided he was going to find out.
I think at that point...
Just don't put the sign up.
No, I think at that point, I think they would be like fisticuffs.
Yeah.
Who was running over his sign. So you imagine he's going to buy some cameras, right? Nope, not in South Carolina. They don't do things that way. Instead, he had a square boulder delivered to his house from a local landscaping company, and he promptly painted a Joe Biden sign on all 4 sides. So no matter what direction the truck was coming from, or whatever car it was, he didn't know at this point, they would see that Joe Biden sign, and they would hopefully run it over. The best part about this is the guy who had been running over the signs actually came over and talked to him while he was painting the boulder. I'm sure the whole time he was giggling to himself, knowing he's the one that's been running over the signs. But they chatted about the new addition to the front lawn and, you know, things went on. Life was normal. 3 nights later, the sign-killing neighbor had been at a happy hour and was driving home and saw that his neighbor had a new Joe Biden sign on his lawn, so he ran it over. Sadly, he didn't have a newer car with no airbags, so it broke his sternum and his collarbone. Jeez. When the police arrested him and during questioning, they asked about the boulder. Didn't you know about the boulder? You live like 2 doors down. He said he just forgot. The average IQ in South Carolina is 97.8. Here's a little chart that explains where that stands. It's average. A very superior IQ is 130 and above. 120 to 129 is superior. 110 to 119 is high average.
Mine's 106.
And 90 to 109.
Have you calculated yours? Yeah, 106.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've not calculated mine. Probably like 80.
Mine is average, and that's where most of these will fall on this list. When you get below 70, it usually means you could do things like play hide and seek by yourself. And it's challenging.
Ooh.
There's a website called surprisinglives.net, and they listed jobs that are good for people with certain IQ numbers. And they've got a big chart. If you have the IQ of the average South Carolinian, which is 97.8, and for any sheet metal workers or any other occupation I bring up during this is just a typical thing, just an average. I'm sure you excel at a lot of things. Sure, you got your doctorate from Stanford, and you're just doing sheet metal work because you really enjoy working with sheet metal.
Texas. Do you know where it is? It's places where there's a lot of land. So if you say like I'm a farmer and I give birth to you, and rather than send you to school and university, I send you to school to get your basic education, and then you're going to work on the farm. I think it's a lot of places like that.
Yeah.
Where they're not pushing them to have an education. They're doing manual work. So it's not that they're all thick, it's just that they don't have the opportunities to go to all these schools. And
Number 9, Texas. Texas is another state that has some really good universities, and they have some pretty good school districts too. They get high marks in a lot of them. Just like any state though, you're going to find some that are horrible. But overall, when you're looking at the education attainment level, Texas does pretty good. Their IQ isn't great. There's a great story came out of Texas some years back about a guy who I'm sure was working with a pretty low IQ. He decided to jump the fence at the local police department. He actually stole the lights off the top of a cop car and attached them to his 1978 Ford Pinto with the fake wood paneling along the side, and drove up and down Main Street and was surprised they figured out it was him that jumped the fence at the police parking lot. The average IQ in Texas is 97.4.
Do you know, that reminds me of that story just then. Dylan.
What, has he done something similar?
Oh, he's always doing stupid shit.
A nice job for a 97.4 IQ level? Heating and refrigeration mechanic. Don't complain to me about that. That's according to Surprise Living.
Yeah.
Number 8, West Virginia. Anyone else surprised West Virginia's on this one? West Virginia is a beautiful state with beautiful people. But there's a whole bunch of jokes and stereotypes about these people and their intellect. Been going on for decades and decades. And the thing about stereotypes and jokes, they don't just come out of nowhere. Stereotypes, which you shouldn't use, if you really think about it, they're earned. And there's a difference between racism and stereotypes. Now, the IQ of the people out in the hollers and the people that are living in the cities is like night and day in this state. The average IQ of West Virginia is 97.2. And this one kind of surprised me. They suggest a good job for someone with that IQ is real estate agent. Number 7, Arkansas. Arkansas, like West Virginia, has earned a lot of its stereotypes and jokes.
From, right?
That being said, the most common joke about Arkansas is people dating relatives. Chew on that for a while. I once saw a comedian that said Little Rock,
I thought that was Alabama.
Yeah.
Arkansas, where a below average IQ is above average. He said he was checking into a hotel in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they misspelled his first name. First name's Ron. He said he had to correct them twice. The average IQ of Arkansas is 97.1, and surprising life suggests a good job for that IQ is flight attendant.
California.
Number 6, California. Yeah, you know, you're not going to find a lot of low IQs on the western side of the state. It's when you start getting into the California backwoods of the desert, that's where you start finding some lower IQs. There's a whole lot of people in California that are, working with half a deck. The driveway doesn't go all the way to the garage. Back around 2015 or 16, I read a news thing about a guy who had been arrested for going into women's restrooms, like public restrooms, sticking his cell phone underneath or over the stall and taking a quick picture and running out. He gets caught. He's in court. He's convicted. He has to get therapy and he's on parole. He leaves the courtroom, goes to the women's bathroom across the hallway, and starts taking pictures again. They arrest him in the courthouse right outside the courtroom he just left. His defense was double jeopardy. He thought because he was already convicted of that, he couldn't be convicted of it again. Could you just imagine the judge and the lawyers in that room when he tried to use that defense? The average IQ in California is 97.1. A good job for that IQ? Sewage plant operator. That is fitting because there's a lot of sewage in California. Number 5, Nevada. I'm sure with Nevada, like a lot of the states, you're going to find the lower IQs out in the middle of the state. And in Nevada's case, it's out in the middle of the frickin' desert or Mars. They look very similar. I think the best example of a person with a low IQ I saw on an episode of Cops in Las Vegas. The police roll up on this guy. He's soaking wet. Apparently, he'd been roaming around the fountain collecting change. He wasn't homeless or anything like that. He had just gambled all his money away and had no way to get home. So the cops tell him to throw all the change back in and tell him to not do it again. They go to the end of the block, do a U-turn to go back the other way, and they see him in the fountain again. It wasn't until the third time when they arrested him. Nevada's average IQ score is 96.
That's just an opportunist, I think.
Yeah.
That's not thick, that's just being clever.
0.6. And the recommended job for that IQ is dock worker.
Alabama.
Number 4, Alabama. Yep, the heart of Dixie ain't knocking it out of the park when it comes to IQs. They rank 4th in the nation for lowest IQs. They also rank 4th in the nation for people who mistook vodka for Listerine. Alabama's got a long list of problems, and low IQ isn't even one of their worst problems. Having Birmingham within your borders, I think, is a bigger problem. Alabama's average IQ is 96.4. The suggested career for that type of IQ? Auto body repair.
The suggested career is a bit waffle,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, it's
Really,
because
it's just what you're good at.
Yeah,
you could be
because
good at. You could be really good at that and
Yeah,
be really
mechanic.
stupid.
Yeah, I mean, to be a mechanic, you have to study. You can't just
Yeah.
open a car, boot it, and do it.
Number 3, Mississippi. You know, they never disappoint. Whenever you're working on a video or a list or talking about a horrible state that's got a bunch of problems, they always show up. Mississippi's got a lot of problems. Being consistent in the suckage side ain't one of them. There's a newspaper called LA Weekly, and they always had the weird of the news. It was this section where they just found stories across the country that were just weird. They had a story about a guy living in Mississippi. He woke up one morning after heavy drinking and found someone had broken into his house while he was sleeping and taken everything. Just took everything he owned. He calls
Where?
I'm sure I saw an alligator there, on the right.
Oh, yeah.
had broken into his house while he was sleeping and taken everything. Just took everything he owned. He calls the police. The police eventually show up at his house and they start taking the report. One of the police that were at his house happened to look in the backyard. Everything he owned was in the backyard. So the police go next door to see if, the neighbors had seen anyone break into the house in the middle of the night and do this, and what was the story. And one of the neighbors said, yeah, I could see him doing that. It was like 3 a.m. It was him doing it, nobody else. Now, I'm not sure if that's an IQ problem or I don't know what that is, but it's a great story. Mississippi's average IQ is 95.8. Suggested career path for this type of IQ? Drywall.
Louisiana.
Number 2, Louisiana.
Unless Florida's number 1, I've got it out, so I've completely got it wrong, haven't I?
Yeah.
Peas and carrots, Mississippi and Louisiana are in the suckage list. There's a lot of things that Louisiana does poorly. One of my favorites is they're the actual worst in the country for workplace safety. It's like far too many people living in that state that are missing fingers. The average IQ in Louisiana is 95.2. Now, when I looked at the suggested jobs for this IQ, I was a little alarmed. One of them is sailor, that's easy, but the other one was nuclear decontamination technician.
Whoa.
Seems like an odd field to get into with an average IQ. You throw the word nuclear on there, you expect the person to have a little education. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There's a link for that in the description area below. All right, on to number 1.
New Mexico.
Sorry.
And number
anyone from
1,
Florida.
New Mexico. I was a little surprised at this one. When I'm thinking states with low IQ, I never thought New Mexico would. I mean, I knew they probably wouldn't be knocking it out of the park, but to be number 1, yeah, I guess it's a thing. I started looking at the education numbers. Graduation rate, they kind of paint this picture. Now, obviously, IQ is different from education. I'm not saying one is the other, but usually if you got a bunch of people with lower than average IQ, they're not really pushing through to get the diploma. If you ever get outside the cities in New Mexico, you start running into some people with far below average IQs. There's a whole bunch of people in this state that think there's an underground city of aliens and that the U.S. government has been at war with them for decades underground. Somewhere in the mountains north of Taos, New Mexico, apparently this is all going on and has been for a long time. There's a bunch of videos about it on YouTube. One guy's been up in those hills for years. He just goes up there like every weekend looking for the entrance to this underground city. He even puts little listening devices up against
Very
rocks and he
derelict, isn't
claims
it?
he can hear the battle going on. He's not playing with a full deck. The average IQ in New Mexico is 95. Suggested career path for an IQ of 95? Welder. They also have roofer as a possibility.
I'd like to know where they get these jobs from.
Yeah, I know.
Because some of them,
He's
like,
obviously just searched up like what's the recommended job for this IQ, hasn't he?
the one that made me feel a bit like really was the air stewardess.
What, like 97 or something?
Yeah,
as
but
well?
I wouldn't say
You don't
that
really
that's
have
a
to
job
be smart for that.
Well, actually, you
you
do.
probably do a bit.
There's
Obviously,
people that think that they're just glorified waiters in the air. There's a lot more into it. I've got friends who are air stewardesses, and they have to know CPR. They have to know medical things.
I guess.
There's a lot of
Didn't
stuff
think
that-
about that really.
There's a lot of stuff they have to know.
But yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. But like, at the same time, the whole like the worst state in the whole country is still like not even below average, which is actually pretty good, really,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah. There was none that were like super low IQs.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for us, please, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.